Hello, you're watching TelecomTV and our extended coverage of the DSP Leaders Report series. I'm Guy Daniels, and today's discussion looks at some of the highlights from our most recent report, AI in the RAN. And for the second year running, we asked mobile network operators for their views on how, when, and why they plan to use AI in the RAN. If you are a registered viewer of TelecomTV, you can download the report now. There's a link in the text below this video. There's no cost, and registered viewers will have access to all of our reports, articles, and videos. For this year's report, we also asked a set of new questions related to the impact of AI traffic on the RAN and how AI should fit into 6G RAN standards considerations. Well, we received responses from 44 qualified respondents who work at MNOs across Asia, Europe, Africa, and the Americas. And now that we have published the results, it's the perfect time to discuss our findings with our special guests. So, joining me on the program are Beth Cohen, Product Strategy Consultant for Verizon, Ghyslain Pelletier, VP of Technology Wireless Standards at InterDigital, and Patrick Kelly, Founder, Partner and Principal Analyst of Appledore Research. Hello everyone, it's good to see you all. Thanks so much for coming on the programme to help us make sense of all these findings. And we're going to focus on some specific points that came out of the research and look at these in more detail. So to start with, there's this assumption that all mobile operators are going to reap the benefits of using AI in the RAN, but it seems not everyone thinks that way. We asked, when do you think AI will positively impact RAN operations for most mobile network operators? And last year, 84% believed that most MNOs would be experiencing an AI upside in their RANs before the end of 2026, and only 2% thought never. Well, this year, just 66% said by the end of 2026, and 11% voted for the never option. So basically, is AI in the RAN losing its shine? Or is this about longer timelines to see the benefits for most operators? And perhaps, are we heading for an AI in the RAN digital divide? Patrick, can I come to you first? And what are you seeing in the work that you're doing on AI in the RAN?
Yeah, Guy. So I think, first of all, based on the survey results, I think the timelines are probably about correct. We're probably 1 to 2 years away from seeing commercial deployments. There's a lot of activity right now in terms of trials and proof of concepts. Most of that, I would say, is focused on things like spectral efficiency and energy management. So more on the RAN optimization. I think some of the recent announcements that we've seen, first of all, the NVIDIA investment in Nokia for $1 billion. And then within the last week, we've seen an announcement from DT and NVIDIA. I think what this implies is that you'll see more of a focus on optimization of the RAN. And then maybe 3-4 years out, when the business cases surface, we'll see more of the monetization play. I think the monetization side of how you use AI in the RAN for monetization is still up in the air.
Yeah, now that is really interesting. Thanks very much, Patrick. And Beth, can I come across to you as well for your thoughts on this question and the answers we received?
I think there's a little bit of a chicken and an egg going on here, which is, of course, who's putting the AI in, how's it be handled. I think it's a lot of it depends upon the vendors, and the vendors need to put it in. And then, of course, once the vendors, such as Nokia, put it in. Then the telecoms themselves need to check it out, do those trials to make sure that it all works. Because you can't really test it without that scale. I mean, that's what AI is all about, scale. So I think, and of course, telecoms are traditionally pretty conservative about such things. So I think there's a whole lot of moving parts that will take a little longer to settle down, which, I think is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Beth. And yeah, I think it's apparent that we bundled together benefits in our survey there. And, as Patrick started to say, there are different aspects of this and some are coming at different timelines. Ghyslain, let's come across to you as well. What do you make of these findings?
I agree with the previous comments from both Beth and Patrick. And from if I take the standards perspective, I think that what I'm interested in seeing is if the first rollout of 6G will have a catalyst effect on increasing the amount of AI and amount of use case that's being deployed in the RAN. I think in the first phase, or the phase that we are now, it's a lot about proprietary implementation. It's a lot about the network vendors, as was said by Beth. And I think that as standards look into priorities for 6G, which is monetization and reducing total cost of ownership, then more will be enabled, and we will be able to roll out more AI and see additional benefits. But the timeline of standards is a little bit longer. So it is a stepwise approach, it seems.
Thanks very much, Ghyslain. Well, next survey question then, and the proposals put forward by the AI RAN Alliance are widely discussed in the industry, but our experience is that there's still a degree of skepticism about elements of this three-part proposal. So we asked, do the AI RAN Alliance proposals related to AI for RAN, AI on RAN, and AI and RAN provide a useful and relevant foundation for mobile operator next generation network strategies? And you can see the results on the slide. 34% of respondents say yes, 39% say yes to certain aspects, and 25% are unsure. So fairly well spaced out set of views there. So Beth, let me come to you. Is the AI RAN Alliance onto something? Because the results suggest anything but major pushback.
Just looking at that chart, I would say the jury's still out on exactly the right approach, which again makes sense. I think the AI Alliance and the RAN Alliance are still trying to figure it all out, and they're kind of, I wouldn't say throwing spaghetti at the wall, not quite, but they're trying different approaches and trying to figure it out. And that applies to the operators as well, right? So the operators need to figure out, in terms of where to put the different elements, what makes the most sense. Do you put the AI at the edge? Do you put it in the core? Do you put it in a mix? I suspect that's what's going to end up happening in the end. It's going to be distributed. But I think, again, as was earlier alluded to in the previous question, we're still working it out.
Thanks, Beth. And that's a great final comment there. It's so apparent, isn't it? We're still working out so many aspects of all this. Ghyslain, let's come across to you. Is the jury still out here? Is there still more thinking to be done?
Absolutely. I think what's happening, this breakdown into different areas for further investigation or work, I think what it does is it provides us at least with a baseline of the challenges and the hurdle that remains, what we need to solve, where we need to keep putting some focus to enable more deployments of AI. So I think we have to look at it as the big benefit is that it at least raises the questions that are maybe not all equally important, but it at least raises very good questions that we need to address going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to raise those questions, and then we've got to put in the effort to actually study them and see what the implications are. Thanks very much. And Patrick, what's your take on this?
Yeah, Guy, I would just add, I think what we'll see is very discrete use cases, particularly around AI in the RAN. So if you look at, for example, newer technology being deployed, many more antennas with MIMO, you've got more traffic on the uplink between the base station and your smartphone or some IoT device. So I think using AI and some of the ML algorithms, you'll see early deployments where channel state information, the compression on that, AI is being used to optimize that. And that kind of goes back to spectral efficiency, saving battery life, things of that nature. And I think those are the things that we should look for in the industry, is where you have very discrete use cases and you're not trying to boil the ocean.
Yeah, interesting. Good ideas. Thanks very much, Patrick. And Beth, let's come back to you quickly.
So I just wanted to get back to, that's all dependent upon the vendors who need to write the software and have the hardware that can handle these use cases. So I agree with Patrick that I think it's going to be some quite specific use cases. I was actually recently at a conference where I heard some presentations around specific AI use cases at the edge related to particularly around turning systems down and optimizing for power consumption. So I think that's a really, really good use case for that, because you don't have to get it 100% right. But I suspect, again, the vendors have to lead the charge here.
Yes, I'm sure we'll be seeing that. And again, with these questions on this report, it's going to be interesting to pose them again in 12 months' time and see how the trends are moving. Well, let's move on to our next survey question now, because whilst there is much ongoing debate about developing and using AI for the network, there's also major consideration in the telco community of how the network should be architected for AI. So we asked, do you expect AI-driven solutions to significantly impact RAN traffic composition within the next 5 years? And well, the response was overwhelming. 70% of operators expect to see a significant impact on RAN traffic composition over the next 5 years, with just 16% who are not. I must say, I thought this number would be a lot lower. So is this a wake-up call for the broader telco community, or is it a surprise that only 70% expect a significant impact? Ghyslain, let's come across to you. What do you make of that breakdown from our viewers?
I think it's a sign that data will be very important. I think it's also a sign that once we know more about how AI models will be deployed, how they will be maintained, it will generate more traffic. It's essentially a different type of traffic. It's not control signaling. It's not end user data. It's operational data, and essentially it might also depend on the level of appetite of different operators in deploying or using AI in their networks, or even their views about how to monetize it. But for sure, there is interest in creating the ability to have operators generate data sets, so pull data from the terminals. There is an interest into potentially managing models in terms of distributing models in the downlink or updating them. But here there are different choices we can make from technology perspective, right? We can make choices that will lead to more the operational data being exchanged, but we could also have other choices in the way we design our AI in the RAN that might tone down this. So in terms of composition, the characteristic will also change. It might be more of the uplink. It might be a strain on uplink resources. What I'm a little bit more interested in understanding better is it's not only a change in the composition. It might be actually a change on a large upside in terms of volume, and that I want to know more eventually how we're going to keep a check on that.
Yes, indeed. This is certainly one to keep an eye on as we move forward. Thanks, Ghyslain. Beth, let's come across to you next and your thoughts.
So I think there's a little bit of ambiguity in the question. So it was not clear to me that it was addressing the end user traffic that would be affected, or whether it would be the traffic that's, as Ghyslain was talking about, related to the operational aspects of it. The end user traffic, that again, that's a conversation. How much traffic is going to be generated just by the agents themselves? So, we're now getting to the point where we have applications where there are agentic AI out there that is feeding onto itself, and particularly in the IoT space, where these AIs are acting independently and they're generating traffic streams independently. And RAG also, where the AI goes out and gets additional information from real-time sources. So that potentially has the to change the actual traffic that's going over the network significantly. And I think that the operators really need to think about that, how much that traffic is going to be generated by the AI itself.
Thanks very much, Beth. And you're right in terms of that question. The question didn't differentiate between the two types of traffic. Maybe we will make that clearer next year and ask two separate questions on that one. We'll go to Patrick next, and then we'll go back to Ghyslain. But Patrick?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up on what's already been said, guys. So I think we'll definitely see more traffic. It'll be a progressive phase, so it's not like we're just going to get hit with a lot of traffic. In the next 6 months, we'll see an increase in probably user plane traffic. One of the things that I would look for that I think is interesting is, again, this posturing up with primarily your infrastructure provider. So if you look at NVIDIA, they get their CUDA platform, is do you have more developers actually make their way into the ecosystem and leverage some of the infrastructure from Nokia, from Ericsson, from a lot of the infrastructure providers in the RAN, where they have expertise directly with their market. So it could be they're writing applications for the enterprise market that are AI based, and it's using that infrastructure in the RAN. And that's again, it kind of comes back to the monetization question. How do you make money, either if you're an operator or if you're a developer or an enterprise customer? How are you going to monetize the capabilities that will exist in the RAN? And I think that's today. I don't see any compelling use cases around monetization, but it's not to say that we won't see that in the next year or two.
Yeah, thanks very much indeed, Patrick. And CUDA certainly has a stranglehold of the market at the moment, although things always change. It's a fast-moving sector. Ghyslain, let's come back to you for some additional comments.
Yes, I think Beth had a good point about what is it that we define as AI generated, or what is the data that is part of that question. So I think from the end user perspective, we already see applications that generate data in the uplink. Let's say capture context with different modalities, being video or audio, and then sends it in the uplink towards a server or an inference engine in the network, so that there's a task being performed. So I think what we see now, and we test it in our labs, right, over the wireless interface, we see that even the most basic application with low quality, low resolution data already struggles in some situation in having a fair QoE with 5G networks. And the thing is that these are first iteration of those applications. They're basic applications. So what if these applications develop and become much more like high resolution, much more complex, and they live in the terminal? I think from that perspective as well, we might see a shift from the very heavy downlink streaming type of traffic from 5G towards a little bit more of an uplink asymmetric type of traffic from those end user or consumer level application that are driven by AI.
Yeah, so the balance between the two shifts, that's really interesting. Thanks very much for those comments. Right, well, as we've been talking about putting a strain on 5G networks, it's probably about time to talk about 6G networks. One more key finding from the report to look at, because everyone's talking about 6G, whilst at the same time many operators would rather not be talking about the next generation of RAN publicly just at this moment. But like it or not, 6G development is underway. So we asked, do you believe industry standards should define how AI-related data and operations are handled in the RAN for 6G? Well, half of our respondents believe 6G standards should define how AI-related data and operations are handled, while another 27% believe certain functions should be standardized, and only 16% of MNOs believe the potential of AI should not be constrained by industry specifications. And just to reinforce a few points, all respondents to this survey were MNOs. They were all mobile network operators. So do you find these numbers surprising? Do you believe industry standards should define how AI-related data and operations are handled? Ghyslain, I'm going to come to you first because, you know, key area of focus for you, and let's get your take.
Well, I'm not surprised by the responses, and I think maybe the responses might change next year if you ask the question again. I think what's happening right now, and what I observe at least in 3GPP and in standardization forums, is that there's a lot of implementation potential. There's a lot of proprietary potential with AI. And there's many use cases also that will require some inter-vendor interoperability. I think because we're still in the process of figuring out what is the priorities in terms of the use cases to enable, what to optimize, what to enable. I think there's still a little bit of unclarity how much standardization we should do. What are the key aspects? And then there is also a question, how do we maintain the balance in leaving the vendors enough flexibility and not over-specifying everything? One thing that I observe is because of that, it's very difficult to converge in 3GPP right now. But what I do see as a consensus is that we will need a framework for managing those models. We will need a framework for managing the data. We will need some form of interoperability. There is certainly some use cases that will be defined for the air interface to reduce the energy, let's say by reducing the need to put power on pilots constantly over the air interface, things like that. But we're in the process of defining what's the best way standards can enable AI and not over-specify anything.
Thanks, Ghyslain. And as you say, it's always difficult getting the balance right, and the answer is probably not as straightforward as some people might think. Beth, let's come across to you for your views.
So I think it's important that the standards bodies do take the lead on this, and part of the reason is the missing thing in your question was data sovereignty, which has become very important right now, and you know, an understanding of who owns that data, and you know, now that we have these giant data pools, you know, data privacy obviously, but data sovereignty as well. And I think there's been rumblings, like in the EU specifically, around monitoring, regulating that data. And so I think that the standards bodies can kind of get ahead of that and be partners with the regulatory bodies to make sure that the data is handled properly and does, the industry can absorb it correctly.
Yeah, good points. Thanks very much, Beth. And watch out for more from us on data and digital sovereignty next month. Okay, well, that's 4 questions from the report handled, but we must leave it there for our discussion. Thank you very much, everyone, for taking part in today's program. If you haven't already done so, then please download the DSP Leaders Report. It's available to all registered viewers of Telecom TV. Registration is free, so sign up now and you can get not only our AI report, but you will have access to all of our DSP Leaders content. And if you're new to Telecom TV, please do take a look at our dedicated AI native telco channel, where you'll find the latest news, analysis and event coverage. For now though, thank you for watching our discussion on AI in the RAN, and goodbye.